And tonight, I am so excited because I've been waiting for weeks and weeks to speak to the one and only Jonathan Hoban. Jonathan Hoban is a psychotherapist. He is specialised within the field of addiction, anxiety disorders, depression, and anger management and trauma work. And much of his work has been in treatment centres over the last 10 years. He is also the author of a wonderful book called Walk with Your Wolf, a part-memoir, self-help and life coaching book that explores the restorative power of nature. Jonathan, thank you so much. I mean, all comes to she who waits.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. But it's lovely to be here. And thanks for asking me.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for joining. I'm so excited to talk to you. And so how you went from working in the NHS, sort of in a probably quite a sterile room. Would that be fair? Quite a sterile environment?
It wasn't great. Yeah.
And how you kind of, what was the journey from shifting from that environment to going out to nature? Because that was, you had been doing this for a while. So that was quite a sort of, different move back then, right?
Well, it was. I mean, it was kind of, I've been doing my placements as a counsellor, and I was starting to really kind of see sort of clients around that time, properly. And of course, so I was having the experience of working in a GP surgery to see one-to-one clients. And then it was a recovery work. It was actually quite a big room where we were actually working. But it was still, but when we saw clients again, it was the very typical room that you'd have sort of within those buildings, which is, no kind of windows, 4 walls, gurney, so, and again, for if you're doing either motivation or interviewing techniques, or whether it is you're actually having counselling sessions, it just felt, for those, someone like myself who has got ADHD, or someone back in the day when I had anxiety, sitting in a room looking at someone, it's not great. That feels too intimidating, and not being able to look, and not looking out the window. Basically, if you're to look away from the counsellor, again, you've got nothing to look at, so you feel very, very trapped. And actually, it kind of it heightens anxiety. It doesn't actually help. And also at that time, we had mums with buggies, mums with kids. Yeah. And of course, what was happening is they were coming in to have counselling in those rooms. The kid would cry, and therefore the counsellors at the time they said, we can't give you counselling, because it's too distracting with the kid in the room. So I'm not being the Mother Teresa type of how do I sort out this kind of problem. I saw the problem, but also I'll be honest with you, I really struggled to be sitting in an office, with the kind of the artificial light. I really struggled with sitting down all day. Someone who's got ADHD, I majorly struggle with. So I found, we were opposite where we kind of worked, was Richmond Park. So I literally decided to take a few clients for a walk in Richmond Park. And it was just completely, the whole dynamic of the session changed. Clients who were anxious became relaxed. They didn't feel intimidated because they didn't have to look at you. They would open up a lot more. Mums who had kind of kids in the buggies, the kid would go sleep or just would be naturally kind of distracted by what was actually happening around them. And there's that thing of when you walk in nature, nature softens everything for you, really, And also the thing is, if you're sitting someone in a counselling room, silences become very awkward. When you're walking in nature, those silences and gaps become a lot more natural and make the client a lot more relaxed in the moment.
Oh my gosh, that is such a relevant point, actually, because those silences can also be that sort of breathing space, can't they, to sort of consider what the questions that has been asked or what you've just said. But sometimes they can hang a bit heavy in a therapy room. We're also kind of online, right? But I can totally get how in nature, and also you're moving, and it's quite sensory, isn't it? How that would sort of soften that and help things, really. Just Jonathan, just sort of to backtrack a minute, can you explain to anyone who doesn't know what you were a recovery therapist, what that means?
No, a recovery worker. So I was I got the wrong job, actually. I meant to go for a recovery coach, which was counselling skills, where you give motivational to interview techniques to those who are coming off drugs who are presenting in the NHS. Oh, okay. I ended up managing people's methadone opiate prescriptions as a recovery worker. I'm working with very high risk clients, and so they would come in and we tried to get them reduced off methadone. and basically into more healthy interventions like either group therapies or rehabs, working alongside social services, working alongside probation, and working with nurses as well, and dual diagnosis workers and the community mental health team. Yeah.
Wow. So it's quite extensive work. And so you notice then bringing people out of the therapy room with the artificial light. Is there something about artificial light that is sort of, you find, what is it that you find difficult about it with relation to ADHD as well?
For me, it always gave me a panic attack. Always. I always felt really panicky. Oh, always. Yeah, I mean, but it's the old strip lighting, the old strip light. Yeah. I hated it at school. I hated it at any other moment in my life.
No, it's like in the supermarket.
I'm just like that. I'm like, no, So it's basically my kryptonite. So essentially.
Oh, interesting. You're not a sanctuary shopper then.
If you want to break me down, stick me in a room with kind of like strip lighting, and I'll talk within an hour. So
kebab shop for you.
Absolutely not. So but the natural light, there is something. I mean, it's to do with lux levels as well, but it's everything. It's the sounds of nature when you walk out. If it's a blue sky, just natural light, everything that kind of it self-soothes your senses in a completely different way. And for teenagers as well, ultimately teenagers do not want to sit in a room. They don't want to sit down for that long a time. They don't really want to look at you anyway. That is definitely very confrontational. So that's why I found with teenagers, walking therapy is one of the best models for them.
For sure. And also, I guess, being out in nature, we've got the whole sort of circadian biology, haven't we, that's being impacted, and sort of setting our circadian rhythm in the morning and in the evening, getting the sort of sunset light, and then, of course, the mood boosting properties of that during the day. And so for your journey, Jonathan, you said you had ADHD. How did you end up sort of finding nature? Tell us a bit more about that part.
Yes, I mean we've always walked in nature. I mean, my mum's actually from County Antrim. She died when I was very young. But we did many walks in County Antrim. We did many walks on Wimbledon Common. There was something special about County Antrim because it was like, when you're young and you see the sea for the first time, you're like, it's the sea, especially if you don't live by the sea. It's very exciting. You're driving down and then you suddenly see a glimpse of the sea. You're like, wow. So, but in County Antrim especially, it's green. I mean, they called it the Emerald Isle for a reason. It's green. So I always remember like, wow, it's a vibrant. It's a vibrant green as well. But also it was the waves, and there were storms, and when it was a storm, there was the wind. And it's not nice little waves, it's crashing waves against rocks and hugely dramatic, not at all like me. But it kind of almost matched my personality, I think. There's something wonderful romantic about it as well. But it was always the power of it was enormous, And I really felt it, and it very quickly, because of that, became my higher power. And of course, when I had a breakdown at the age of 23, and I did not have a sense of who I was at all.
Yes.
I was sitting on a bench in Wimbledon Park, by Wimbledon Park Lake, and I just literally started walking, and I didn't even think about it. It was a very innate. And as I started to doing it, by the time I finished that walk for 2 hours, I did feel better. And so I did it the next day, and the day after that, and the day after that. And nature quickly became very familial. I used to name the trees, I really would connect. And it started, the more I did it, the more nature did connect. It did connect, like, we look at kind of relationships with human beings, but the relationships we have with nature, there is absolutely no different, really. It's only how we choose to see it. So the more that you connect with nature, the less I felt alone. And I did it to the point that I can honestly say, now in life, if everything was kind of taken away from me, I would never ever really feel alone again, because of that relationship, because of the time I kind of invested in connecting with nature, for sure.
And it's interesting you call it your higher power. Because I remember when I was in a recovery program myself, they used to talk about higher power a lot, or they would say God, and a lot of people would be very resistant to that word God, and so they would say good orderly direction instead, or higher power, or just. And I thought good orderly direction was actually quite a good one, considering the chaos that I felt. You mentioned there that you lost your mum. Your mum passed away when you were quite young. which leads me to my next question, actually, that in February, my dad passed away, and he had quite a sort of long, drawn out departure, which was very different to what happened with my mum, who it was very sort of contained, her suffering, if you like. It was sort of, for want of a better word, it was all sort of neatly contained. She was diagnosed 5 months later. She died at home peacefully, and it was all managed. Whereas it didn't feel like that with my dad. It felt sort of very prolonged, and a lot of suffering and a lot of struggle. I just love to hear a bit more around how nature can help us sort of process losses, and sort of almost the metaphors in nature, or when things are messy. You know, you don't have the neat ending. You don't have the sort of it neatly packaged. It's uncomfortable and it's complex and it's rugged around the edges. Do you know what I mean? Talk nice nature metaphor. But how you kind of what we could sort of offer people within that, of a way to sort of help themselves, really. So I think there's so many people struggling now with economically, emotionally, out of COVID, environmentally. What were your thoughts on that, Lily?
Well, first, I mean, I'm really sorry. As you know, I'm sorry to hear about your dad. And
Thank you.
And even though it's February, it's really recent, isn't it? That's actually happened. And absolutely, and I think, however you are prepared, like my dad has a long drawn out, he had vascular dementia, and when he actually died, there was that stages of decline, but also when he did, and I thought so because I grieved every single stage of that decline. I thought when he actually died, I would have kind of done my grieving, and I found it to be actually completely the opposite, and really, really majorly knocked me for six. And I had what I call a spiritual heartbreak, and people kind of go, "What is a spiritual heartbreak?" You've got like a physical heartbreak, it's like, for me, there's kind of breaking up with a girlfriend when as a teenager, you have your first sense of heartbreak we talk about. Spiritual heartbreak for me is one where, I was going, it breaks your spirit, quite literally. There was, it's almost like I looked out the window, I couldn't connect with nature, all of that kind of thing. So what you're talking about is really quite interesting. So with grieving and nature, I mean, nature is, when I worked with clients, what I found helped more than anything else is actually sitting next to them and saying nothing. And actually just being present, in nature. It's not even walking, just being surrounded by it is really powerful. Losing someone, for me, when I can only talk about my own experiences, because grief is different for everyone, and there are no rules to grief. And we've got the stages of grief, but really there are no rules to it. And you can come and go and hit you when you're least expecting it. And also, as I said, every single bereavement is very different depending on who that person was and what they meant to you and how they died as well. So, but there is one thing in common the whole time. When someone dies, the world is unbelievably surreal. One is actually in a state of shock as well, and actually don't realize that they're in shock, and that can really go on for really quite some time as well, even if you're prepared for it or not prepared for it. So again, I remember kind of saying, I don't want to be on my own, but I also don't want someone just to talk at me. Because again, when someone dies, there's a lot of talking as well. There can be a lot of talking. There can be a lot of organizing. So actually nature for me was a place to kind of be still. But also when I went out and looked at nature after someone died, it changed. It felt different. You realize that you're surrounded by life, that something's actually different. Okay. So I think for me, it was more the silence, and also it was a place of like thinking. It was so surreal, but it gave me that time to process it. Also, the thing about life is, even though when someone's died, the irony is you're surrounded by nature that's still continuing. It's very hard to ignore the life cycle, because again, when you walk through the seasons end and then another one begins. But I mean, I think for grieving, to be honest with you, for me, in that moment of it being completely surreal, I enjoyed going on walks, because sometimes I'd talk to someone, I'd meet someone, I'd have a chat, they would ask me what had happened. They would actually talk about themselves, and actually sometimes, dealing with grief, I know what's happened to me. I don't want to talk about me anymore, and also I'm struggling to put to words what that grief is, because grief is, you can't really put grief into words sometimes. Grief is a feeling that you are going through. And I think for me, it was just surrounding myself by something, nature, in different kind of parts of nature, And I think it's about finding the parts of nature that are really soothing for you. So for instance, lakes I found unbelievably soothing. Water I found unbelievably soothing. When I train other therapists up doing walking therapy, I say to them with bereavement, by water, there was something about water. I don't know what it is, you know, but sitting and looking at the calm of that water, it really, I think it really mended. I think it slowly helped whilst I was slowly healing and my heart was slowly healing. After a while, you know, that disconnection with nature slowly came back, you know, but I think one has to just trust in the healing properties of nature. And I think just being outside in it is really, really enough without actually overthinking what nature, what all the technicalities of nature and what it actually does. I think it's more of a feeling. Yeah.
More of a sensory thing. Yeah.
Well, the more you do it, the better you feel. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's really interesting what you say about the water as well, because I know for myself, when I've sort of seen like really rough oceans, it's almost sort of as a metaphor for maybe how I have felt. It's felt turbulent. It's felt like a tsunami. It's felt huge, and then the water slows down, and it starts to move more slowly. And the waves start when it's calm, and sort of you can see the reflection of things. It would always help me kind of feel a broader perspective. It's just a life cycle. It's something that is undeniable. It's something we're all going to face. And I think that when a second parent goes, though, that finality of an end of a complete era, you know, and also that you're next in line.
Yeah, thanks for that.
A bit sobering.
No, absolutely. And but also you can look at the same bit of water and go one day and go, wow, you know, it's given me perspective, and wow, I feel at peace and I feel calm. The next day you can look at it and you can go, I can look at that bit of ocean out there. And I can go, oh my God, I feel lonely, you know? So again, it kind of almost, we can see what it can reflect how we're feeling, you know, by our reaction to same bits of scenery. We can have different reactions to it. And also it's a really wonderful reflection tool of how we are actually feeling.
I mean, I also go for rituals. I think the rituals I find really helpful. Kind of like when I feel I feel kind of out of control with something, if I can perform rituals that I feel safe within and give me a sense of control. And I think that's where kind of going out for a morning walk, seeing the morning sun, going for an evening walk, exercising outside, you know, looking at the sort of my surroundings, the different colors, the texture, the light, can give me that sense of knowing there's a beginning, middle and end to this ritual that I know the outcome of, that feels predictable in a time where it's unpredictable. So does that make sense?
Well, in grief, the one thing everybody says is, you know, don't make any sudden changes in your life and have structure to your day. Structure at any time in your life is really important. At the minute, given what's happening in society, structure is the most important thing. And some people are going, oh, don't hit me with the structure thing again. No, I will. And I'll keep on doing it again and again, because we need, I think there's a weird thing, like with kids, they need structure. And at some point in our life, we suddenly kind of go, well, I'm adult, therefore I don't need structure anymore. Or I can probably get away with it, you know? But we're still, our body still functions in exactly the same way. We're just a much bigger version of it. That's the thing. So structure is incredibly important. As you said, it's like every single day going out. It gets, if you're grieving, sometimes all you want to do is not face the world. It is very confusing in terms of how we feel, and sometimes we just want to kind of switch off from everything and have a place of neutrality. And the thing about nature is very, very neutral. It's it's a very neutral space to think, especially if you've lost someone and you're looking around, you're surrounded by memories. You don't really want to talk to someone on the phone. So it's almost like, so what can I do? So that's the thing. I think if you walk, you have that time to think and feel. But the wonderful thing about nature doesn't rush you. It doesn't suddenly, and it doesn't rush itself. It doesn't go from summer to winter to spring to this to that. You know, it takes its time, and that in terms of mirroring, when people kind of say like, I'll be over this in 3 months, you're going, what? You know, when my mother died, someone said in a year you'll be over this, and it got to a year, and I was like, I haven't even started. Do you know what I mean? And
mm.
that's the thing. So nature, I think if you build that relationship, it will stay with you on that journey for as long as you need. And of course, it's free and you can do it every single day and as much as you want.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. And I find that, there's a walk I go on in the morning and there's some swans there. And I've watched them change from, what do they call them when they're baby swans? Anyone in the comments?
Cygnets.
What are they? Cygnets.
Oh, no, is it cygnets?
I can't remember when they're brown and you see them, and I've watched their feathers turn white, and they go through this sort of transformation, this process.
Yeah.
That's where when that resistance comes in, I find, is when I'll struggle more. If I can lean into it, if I can go with it, trust in the process, then I tend to sort of find I fare better and have that structure and so forth. But it's that kind of observation of the changes, almost reflecting in nature in my own life,
Also, nature's very robust as well. And there's a reminder at times that we don't feel robust. We're actually a lot more robust than we actually give ourselves credit for. If you feel bad and you feel sad, and sometimes you can feel broken, I think there is a reminder in nature that we do have to get up. We do have to kind of keep on moving forward, even when we don't want to, really, because nature's a wonderful and beautiful thing, but nature can turn. Nature, as we know, if there's a storm, we get very quickly reminded, who's boss, And I think with however bigger the storm, we always, the storm will eventually end. And I think it's always kind of knowing that sometimes if you're in a really difficult place, we always want to fix, we want to fix,
God, so true.
rather than just kind of stay. People say stay with the process, and you go, for how long? It's like, I don't know,
Oh my God, that is so true. It's so true. Because I think one thing I learned in this bereavement was not to be afraid of the intensity of emotion. Whereas when my mum passed away, and when I was younger and I had a difficult relationship and stuff, I was scared of the intensity of the emotion. And it's like almost you're saying in nature, it can quickly change, it can become intense, and it can come down. But being able to sort of sit with intense emotions and trust that they will pass through, like the storm passes through, the whirlwind passes through, and it will change, like the winter comes and it changes into spring. So I think all those things can be incredibly helpful. I mean, certainly for me have been those sort of metaphors of how it can be with reflecting of my own. Talk to me a little bit before I let you go. What time is it? I've only got you for a few more minutes. Regret. What do you feel about regret? And when there's sort of regret with loss,
it's quite simply, you've got to, sorry, please.
Yeah, go on. No, yeah. What are your sort of thoughts on that?
Well, I have massive regret with my dad because I had my goodbyes with him. I had my daughter with him. We all came together with the family, and I made I made the choice that was the last time I was going to see him, because I didn't want to see another family member die, because I didn't want to go through that last little moment. Actually, looking back, to be honest with you, I think it was because the enormity of the loss, I just did not want to face. And I had some people going, it's ironic that you're a psychotherapist and, you didn't want to. I'm a psychotherapist, but I'm also a person, a human being as well. And also when you're in the middle of it as well, it can also be very, very different. And for me, I didn't say my goodbyes to him. And I have to live with that for the rest of my life. And I do regret it. But there are two things. Number one, I have to stand by the decision I made at that time. Hindsight's a wonderful thing. But I have to stand by the reasons of doing that at that moment. I have to learn from that. So it's about everything's wasted if there's not learning from it. And in terms of what I will take forward, if you have regret, don't get stuck in regret. Learn something from it, and then make sure you try not to do that again in the future. Of course, you probably will. But forgiveness is a huge part. Self-forgiveness is a huge part. And people say, well, that's an easy thing to do. It's not an easy thing to do. But I think we have to accept that there are moments that we are fallible and that we are not perfect, and we do make mistakes, and there are regrets, But I think the most important thing I'm getting from all of this is life moves forward, and we always have to find a way to move forward. The one thing I like about walking is, like, imagine I met you sort of out on a walk today and you asked me that question about regret. Now, I'm not on my own with that, in terms of regrets, and I'm having that conversation, and I may not have even thought about that. But it's suddenly given me the outlet to talk about it. And that's the one thing I love. If you're sitting indoors all the time when you're grieving, or you're kind of just, you know, going to the office, whatever, when you walk, walking's not just about nature. It's about, you know, we meet people, you know, we talk to people, you know, we may not feel alone sort of in that moment, because, and it's quite nice meeting not someone that we know, someone that doesn't know us as well, you know, and they're seeing you, you afresh, and also you're going to walk away from them at the end of the day. And also they're going to share probably something from their own life that you're going to think, I don't feel alone in that, you know?
Yeah,
so
that's so true. So true. Yeah. Those moments of connection, isn't it? It's those moments of connection that sort of ignite a sense of belonging with people and with humanity and you know, all that is really. One last question, or two actually, but they can be together. What does hope mean to you? And what does healing? Well, I think we've already covered healing, which is nature. But what does hope mean to you? Seeing the title of this is Hope, Healing and Lipstick.
Hope for me is actually not losing your faith in life, not losing your faith in people, not losing your faith in humanity. That's for me what hope is. If you're hoping for something, I think you've got to always be able to see a future the whole time. It can be very sort of, one can get very stuck and very lost when you don't see a future for yourself. I think hope is kind of that kind of confidence you have in yourself that you will actually kind of be okay. But I think, hope is kind of almost kind of thinking, we say we hope for something, we try and think positively. We try and kind of think that good things are going to come down the line. And that for me does very, very much come with having faith in life. Life can break you down very quickly, and you can lose hope and you can lose faith, you know? So I think hope and faith, are they the same thing? Probably. I don't know.
It's funny actually, because I was asked the same question by someone on this, and I said exactly that. Faith. For me, it's faith. Someone was just asking here, how do we get off the if only hamster wheel?
If only. If only. Yeah, well, the if only one is like, if only is like looking back in the past. And you can't, if you stay in the past, you're not going to be able to change it, no matter what, you know. So if only that had happened, and also I think it's a way of removing oneself from actually taking accountability as well, you know, because I think it's a case of like, well, no, if only, not if only. I mean, I did if only for years. I was sitting on a bar stool going, if only, you know, and nothing changed at all. You know, I came out of that 3-year cycle with I'm still in exactly the same place I was 3 years. 3 years
on a bar stool.
yeah, absolutely. You know, I sort of did. It was unbelievable. I was like a statue. In a pub. I was just there every day, just like going like that. So yeah, if only. I think it's about how do I. If only it's about the fear of the future, the fear of moving forward, and we always have to move out of our comfort zone and face our fears. So I think the if only is a way of also avoiding and confronting any fears that you might have. Because if you move out of your comfort zone, it's a very scary place to be. Feel a bit out of control, everything's new. But, you know, the more you kind of do it, the easier it gets.
It's the gateway to change that uncertainty, isn't it? It's tolerating the uncertainty, I think, and being able to just go with it so much. Thank you so much for sharing some time with us and giving us all your wonderful words of wisdom and expertise and experience in this area.